I want to give you a quick upfront review in case you're not concerned about the ins and outs of this character. If you are a meta-focused neural simulation player who is concerned about improving your current scores immediately, Eatchel is not for you. If you are a Labyrinth or co-op player or new to the game, Eatchel is great both on field and as a support. She's more of a tank than a DPS, but she can be built for respectable damage and is very, very difficult to kill. She is also one of the few characters who can provide considerable support to her allies in co-op. If you are a neural simulation player who mains Mary and Swift, Eatchel will likely be useful to you. She won't single-handedly make Swift a top-tier DPS, but she provides a massive attack boost and Swift really benefits from that. Eatchel will do better than current options, but I'm not certain she won't be replaced in the future. If you are a neurosimulation player who mains Freesia Hush, Eatchel is currently the second best option for your third slot. However, due to factors we'll discuss later, she is very likely to become the best option in the future, and you'll want her farmed to Manifestation 5, so it may be worthwhile to get started. Alright? Now, for the curious and the nerdy, let's get into it. I'm going to focus on Eatchel's support capabilities, but first, let's quickly go over her kit. Eatchel has high HP and the highest defense among current characters. Her attack is pretty good as well. She combines these stats with an absurd amount of self-healing to ruin the day of anyone who wishes her harm. Her alignment index gives her healing bonus, which she uses not only to heal, but converts into damage with her standard skill and a team-wide attack buff with her ultimate and signature weapon. Her standard skill groups enemies up, heals her, and lets her fire 2 AoE shots that scale based on how much she healed for. It has a low cooldown and S energy cost. It can handle groups of enemies with ease, but it's a bit slow for single target DPS. Her support skill knocks enemies back, stuns them, then heals her on-field ally. It's an excellent panic button. While it's not on cooldown, it will also heal all allies every second. This isn't a small heal either. We're talking a 700 to 1000 plus heal every second just for having Eatchel in your team. If you have her signature weapon, this heal will build up a 1080 or 1800 attack buff for your team, depending on the weapon tier, which you'll have permanently. Keep in mind that the largest flat attack buff from a single unit prior to Eatchel's release was Moxure Shadowcaw with a 1950 attack buff with 35% uptime. You're getting basically the same buff permanently for free and healing. It's real good, folks. Her ultimate skill does some damage and knocks enemies off their feet. Then, she heals your entire team for 2/3 of their HP or so and activates her Icebound Claws. These claws give your team, including co-op teammates, another attack buff based on her attack and healing bonus. Not only is this attack buff bigger, but it is the second longest duration buff in the game, right after her signature weapon buff, which is effectively permanent. The claws last 10 through 20 seconds each, depending on how much energy you have when you use her ultimate. She has 5 claws to start and 6 claws at Manifestation 5. They decay one at a time, so the buff slowly decreases, but will persist to some extent for a staggering 2 minutes. Her first manifestation will let her keep 2 Icebound Claws active at all times, even before she ults. Not only will they save an ally from being killed, which will consume them, but they give your whole team, including co-op teammates, a flat attack buff just for existing. It's about 150 attack per claw at the lowest, but can get as high as 350 with good logistics. Her second manifestation reduces her ultimate's cooldown to just 25% of the maximum duration of the buff it gives. Her third manifestation gives her team a 3% damage boost per active claw. This sounds small, but damage boosts are multiplied by your attack in the damage formula. Since she gives such massive attack boosts, the value of this maximum 18% damage boost is much higher than it initially appears. Her fourth manifestation increases the potency of her claws, including the attack buff that they give. Her fifth manifestation allows her to have a maximum of 6 claws instead of 5. This increases both the maximum buff and the duration of the buff. As for what manifestation you need, well, Eatchel will be just fine at M0. She'll get her job done and do it well. Manifestations 1 and 2 are nice quality of life, but they don't change her top performance. Manifestations 3, 4, and 5 are all hefty jumps in how much damage she adds to your team. She's not reliant on her signature weapon to function as a tank and healer, but it does account for just under half of her maximum buff potential. It's also the most easily accessible and permanent buff in her kit. I highly recommend it, and if you're pulling for dupes, get a second copy of her weapon before pulling for her again. Overall, Eatchel is yet another character release that redefines what is possible in Snowbreak. She brings massive, previously unimaginable buffs with unheard of uptime. She heals like she was born to do it and is nearly invincible while having some form of crowd control on every ability. Despite this, you've probably heard that she's bad. So let's talk about that. The people calling her bad are focused on neural simulation, and the name of the game there is maximum damage and minimum time. The way to maximize damage in Snowbreak has always been to add as many separate multipliers as possible to your damage formula and buff them all to a reasonable degree. I'll have a video that goes into depth on this later. The top supports in Snowbreak modify 3 or 4 parts of the damage formula. These modest buffs get multiplied together into a bigger buff. Eatchel has the largest flat attack buff the game has ever seen, but it only modifies 1 part of the damage formula. Her third manifestation gives a small damage buff to another part, but that only brings her to 2 modifications total. Even so, her buff is so monumentally huge that it is still bigger than other supports in many cases. But it requires her to use her ultimate. At 40 minimum cost, it's possible for some teams to pull this off, but this counts as switching operatives and will cancel your main DPS's skills. Yao Winter Solstice will lose her ultimate form if Eatchel ults after her, but will delay her own ultimate by about 7 seconds if she ults after Eatchel. Since Yao, at top levels, often kills bosses in 10 seconds, a 7-second delay is a deal breaker. In addition, switching operatives clears stacks of a mono Iwato logistics, which means Eatchel has anti-synergy with most of the DPS roster. There are a handful of DPS units that don't use a mono Iwato. Katia Bluebolt, Life Wild Hunt, Marion Swift, and Freesia Hush. Bluebolt already has plenty of attack in her kit, so much that she scales very poorly when adding additional attack. Wild Hunt is a relatively slow DPS that can't build U-Energy quickly due to using an SMG, and relies on keeping her standard skill active for the entire fight. Using Eatchel's ult cancels her standard skill. If Eatchel is paired with Tess the Magician, she can ult at the start of the fight, but Wild Hunt doesn't have the burst to finish in the Magician's 25-second buff window in most cases. On the other hand, Marion Swift has a kit with several damage bonuses but no attack bonuses. She can build U energy faster than any character other than the Magician and can burst damage out at blinding speeds. Swift greatly benefits from huge, flat attack buffs. She also can't fully utilize other existing supports. More testing needs to be done on this front, but Eatchel seems like a promising option. However, Swift is not currently a top-tier DPS, so this potential is not generally enticing to the meta crowd. Finally, there's Freesia Hush. She has no choice but to bring the Magician along as her first support. We should note that the Magician, like Eatchel, only modifies one part of the damage formula. Also like Eatchel, she buffs it far more than any other support, but is often written off because she doesn't fit well into the multiplier meta. The thing is, Hush, and possibly Swift, can just bring both Eatchel and the Magician in their runs. Alone, both of these supports are too one-sided. Together, they multiply the largest damage buff in the game by the largest attack buff in the game. On top of this, Hush and Swift both have unique multipliers built into their kits. Swift ignores a chunk of enemy defense, which, effectively, multiplies all of her damage by about 20%. She can also make use of the high crit damage on her weapon, which is another multiplier most operatives don't get much use out of. Meanwhile, Hush can't crit because she does skill damage, but she has a final damage buff so massive that it's higher than all the other final damage buffs in the game, combined, twice over. In somewhat different ways, Hush and Swift are both better positioned to take advantage of what Eatchel has to offer.
Freesia's effectiveness in combat varies based on height difference with opponent.
These two also avoid the anti-synergy that Eatchel has with the rest of the cast. Swift doesn't lose anything when swapping out for an ally ult. In fact, the time stop during the ult animation doesn't stop her cooldowns from ticking, so more ults equals more DPS for her, even before the debuff is considered. Hush is always paired with the Magician, so U energy is not an issue. She does delay her start by about 2 seconds compared to other options, but she does so much more damage with Eatchel that she catches up in DPS in most cases. But the biggest reason Eatchel is a good long-term pick for Hush is that her buffs do not expire. One of Hush's primary problems is that she does more damage the longer she holds her ultimate, but previous buffs mostly ended in 10 to 15 seconds. Since she can't use support skills during her ultimate, this meant that the higher damage back end came after her buffs expired and thus didn't do more damage than the buffed portion. The Magician has buffs that last for 25 seconds, and Eatchel's buffs last all day, so Hush can hit new damage records with ease. Right now, neurosimulation bosses die fairly quickly, so Eatchel's longer startup time does hold her back as a support for Hush. She's still the second best after Malkshire's Shadow Ka in a 15-second time window, and is roughly even with Acacia Kaguya. We need more tests to see how that works out. However, in a 20-second time window, Eatchel catches up. Eatchel's buffs also scale based on her stats, which is usually more future-proof as new systems of gaining power are inevitably added. Snowbreak has redefined what is possible with every new character release. I imagine they're going to keep doing it. This time, they released a character that is every bit as powerful as the others, but her power didn't immediately shake up the neurosimulation meta. This is fine. Unlike before, she isn't a 5-star support, competing for a position against 4 stars. Depending on what you're looking for, it's very possible that Eatchel is not for you right now. That's also fine. She'll rerun in about 3 months if the pattern holds. But if you're in one of the various groups that can benefit from pulling her, you can be confident that you're getting a full 5-star operative. Her negative reception is largely because she doesn't fit the immediate needs of the people who usually get elbows deep into analysis. No shade to them, of course. They are right to say she isn't what they're looking for. But that has a cascading effect with people who do no analysis at all and simply parrot that she's no good without any understanding of why. If you like self-heals, heals in general, or massive one-dimensional team buffs, Eatchel is everything you could hope for. And I don't have the numbers to back this bit up, but she's also just really fun. Anyway, I hope this helps. I did irresponsible things with my sleep schedule to get it out reasonably on time. Assuming I wake up tomorrow, I'll see you all next week.
今日はいい子にしてたからご褒美ちょ